Hello, this is Mr. Turek, and today we're going to go over how to make an image come out of the phone. I've kind of collected some images from the web, and I would strongly encourage you to actually use your own images and maybe have a friend take a photo of your phone and share it online. But for my purposes, for my example, I'm just using photos off of the web. So I've got my phone photo, and I got a couple of photos of rocket ships, which I think would be a pretty good thing to have kind of, launching out of this phone on the table. So once you got those images together and you kind of know what folder they're in, open Photoshop. Again, Start menu, Photoshop, or just click on the alias. And then when Photoshop's open, you're going to click Open. You're going to find that photo that you want to use. And you're going to find the phone photo. And that's going to kind of be your background. And we're going to add the other photo layer later, and we're going to make a really complex mask of it. So know where that one is too. So open the background layer. And when your photo opens, make sure you go to File, Save As, and save this as a Photoshop document, okay, and give it a name. Last name, first name, coming out of the phone. Okay, and click Save, and then make sure you save often. All right, now we're going to place our second image, and this is the image that's going to come out of the phone screen. So we're going to go File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to use this image. So I'm going to click on that image, click Place, and what you're going to do first is you're going to confirm the placement. You're going to go down to your Layers panel. You're going to right-click on that layer you just placed. And you're going to click on Rasterize Layer. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to turn down the opacity to about 70 to 50% so that you can see the outline of the phone and where your image is and kind of line those two up. What you want to do is you want to have an image that comes outside of the edges of the phone, but fills enough of the phone up so that you don't have to use a clone stamp to kind of like paint some of your image into these corners. I'll show you how to do that later, but for now we're just going to use this image to fill up the entire area within the phone here. Okay, so I'm going to move that where I want it. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click and drag to constrain my proportions here. Make this a bit smaller. Okay. And I think that's pretty good for now. You can kind of see some of the ground here and some of the rocket ship coming out past the edge. So when we're done with the transformation, we're going to hit the check mark in the options bar. And we're going to go back to the layer panel, and we're going to turn the opacity back up to 100%. Alright, so we're going to make a pretty complicated layer mask for this assignment. And to start out, we're going to make a layer mask of the phone screen. And so in order to be able to see the phone screen, you're going to go down to your layer panel, and you're just going to make that top layer invisible by turning off the visibility by clicking on that eyeball icon in the layer panel. And then we're going to use a special tool to make our selection of the phone screen. Because it's a rectangular kind of hard edge shape, we're going to use the Polygonal lasso tool. If you click and hold on the lasso tool and then let go over the Polygonal lasso tool, this is the perfect tool for the job. Okay? The Polygonal lasso tool, every time you click, it makes a straight line. So I'm just going to click in all four corners of my phone screen here. I'm going to click. And I don't have to click and drag, I'm just clicking and then I'm moving. And that gives me a perfectly straight line. Click in that corner. Click in that corner, click in that corner, and then I'm going to go back to the start, and you're going to see the cursor change from the regular lasso tool cursor to that little circle right next to it. And that's just telling you, like, okay, we've completed this selection, you've completed your circle, so when you click on here, that'll be your selection. All right, so let's see if my selection was lining up to the edges of the phone. We're gonna zoom in using Control+, and we're gonna hold down the space bar to use our hand tool. And it looks like I did an okay job, but you know, I'm still kind of missing some of this edge here. So if that happens, you could make the selection again, or you could use the select menu to modify your selection. And this is something I highly recommend for selections where, you know, the edges of your selection are kind of fuzzy or they just need a little bit of tweaking. This is a really handy tool for modifying your selections. So to modify a selection like this, we're going to go to Select, Modify, Expand. And that's going to open up the Expand Selection dialog box. And then we can actually determine how many pixels it's going to expand. And from what I can see here, it's about 4 to 5 pixels to reach the edge. So we're just going to put in 5 pixels and we're going to click OK. And voila, look at that. We have a perfect selection now. It just grew by 5 pixels and we're even hitting some of the white in some of these areas. So to modify the selection a little bit further, we're going to make the edge of our selection kind of fuzzy by feathering it. And feathering is just a fancy word for saying soft or soften the edges. So when I say feather the edges, I mean soften the edges. And that's going to make this kind of blurry part of the phone look a little bit nicer. And it might help over here a little bit too. So you're going to go up to Select, Modify, Feather, and we're just going to feather it by about 2 pixels. We don't want it to get too soft, and we really only need a little bit of feather. So we're going to click OK. And you're not going to notice an immediate change to the selection, at least not yet. And actually, I will kind of show you how you can see that difference later. But for now, just know that you've feathered your selection. All right, so we've made the selection of our phone screen, and we've modified it a little bit. Now we're going to go back to our layer panel, and we're going to make that top layer visible again. And we're going to add the rocket ship to the selection for our layer mask. And the tool we're going to use for that is the Quick Select tool. The Quick Selection tool should be the default tool for the W hotkey. If it's not, because you were using the Magic Wand tool earlier, just click and hold on that and let go of the Quick Selection tool. And the way this tool works is kind of like a brush. And essentially, if a pixel is a similar color to another pixel, when you click on it and paint with it, it will select those pixels. Right now our brush is a little too big, so we're going to go up to the brush option menu. And we're just going to turn down the size just a little bit to make it a little bit smaller. Okay. If you don't like going up to this option bar here, you can use the bracket keys. And the bracket keys are right under the plus and minus keys for zooming. If you hit the bracket keys, you'll jump up by about 5 pixel intervals. And that'll allow you to adjust your brush on the fly. And that's really handy. All right, so we're going to add this to my selection. Okay, so right now the tool is in the add mode. You can tell that because there's an active selection already, and the add to selection has automatically been activated. And that just means that when I click and drag up from here, we're going to add this white pixel, rocket shape to my phone screen selection. So if I click and drag up here, you can see it's automatically selecting those pixels as I paint. It's doing a pretty good job of just selecting the rocket. I can kind of go over these edges a little bit. And then we got this lattice work over here, so that'll be kind of hard to include. But let's just try painting a little bit of that in there. Try adding some of this. You know what? It's not perfect. Like, it's selecting some of that green grass. So if we want to get rid of some of the selection, we're just going to switch modes. We're going to switch to subtract from our selection. And that's up in the option bar and it's right next to add. So if you click on that, notice the cursor in the tool is now a minus sign. And when we click and drag, it's the same principle, but now it's subtracting from our selection. Okay, so still not perfect. If you want to toggle between the two modes, that's pretty easy to do. Just go to the regular new selection tool. Shift is going to be add to your selection, and Alt should be subtract. There we go. There we go. If we go to the add tool, Alt is subtract, Shift is add. Okay. So we can kind of go back and forth between subtract and add to our selection here if we want to. But you know what? This tool isn't really the best tool for this job. We would have to switch tools to one of the most powerful selection methods I'm going to teach you, and that is quick mask. Alright, so I've been using the quick select tool to make these selections, and they're pretty good, but they're not great. I'm kind of losing some of the detail of the lattice work in here. So whenever you have a really tricky selection like that, what you want to do is you want to use quick mask mode. And quick mask mode is going to be kind of complicated, so just bear with me. But you really need to learn how to master using this mode. The way to switch to quick mask mode is you're going to go down to the bottom of your toolbox. This icon right here toggles your selection to quick mask mode. So if I click this, you're going to see this red mask. And this is actually a holdover from analog photography. A red mask like this would block UV light in an exposure and allow you to mask out certain parts of your exposure when you were enlarging exposures in a darkroom. So, not that you need to understand that right now, but that's why it's red, essentially. And this is going to indicate what parts of your selection are not included in your selection. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint with black and white to add to and subtract from our selection. So we got to go over to our toolbox. We're going to switch to the brush tool. And I'm actually going to teach you how to use the brush tool a little bit faster, a little bit better this time. And you know, you can go up to the brush tool here and we can actually adjust the size if we want, you know, using the sliders. We can adjust the hardness if we want. Okay. And you know, that works for the time being. But there's some hotkeys I'll teach you. Essentially, I'm going to paint away this part here, and then I'm going to paint the lattice work over that with white. When you paint with black, as you can see right now, black is my foreground color. That's going to add to your selection mask. It's going to add to your mask, sorry, because I'm painting with red. Okay. And actually, if you want to see what you're doing, you know, like what is this doing? Like, how is this changing the selection? You can just switch back to regular mode, and you can see now my selection's different. I've just painted that away. So back to quick mask mode. And essentially now I'm going to paint with white, and that's going to add to my selection. So I'm going to go down here, I'm going to switch to white, go up to my brush panel here, and make it real tiny. I can paint those tiny little lattices. 2, that seems good. A little bit softer. Okay, and then we're going to zoom in. Control plus. Okay, and now that I have white selected, I can just sort of draw over these white lattice parts and get a really, really precise selection of the lattice. So So that's really handy for selecting really complicated things. The problem is like now I'm constantly going over to my menu and my toolbox to switch things around. Like let's say I wanted to keep painting, but I don't want to keep stopping to switch my tools out. A couple of hotkeys for using the brush tool. One is changing from your foreground to your background color. If you hit the X key, that is going to switch your foreground and your background color. If you use the bracket keys are going to make your brushes larger or smaller. So I made this a little bit larger. Okay, now I'm going to hit the X key. I'm going to switch to white. I'm going to use my bracket key to make it smaller. Paint that away. I'm going to hit X key to switch it to black. Paint that in there. Let's say I wanted my brush to be a little bit harder instead of the soft edges. Holding down the shift in the bracket key makes it harder. So all those soft edges, we're getting rid of those. Because let's say we want to go up here and we actually want to paint this away. We don't want a soft fuzzy edge over here. We want a harder edge. So right now it's got a hard edge. And that's useful for that edge right there. Let's clean this up. Looking good. So again, the shift key plus the brackets, that changes the hardness and the softness. Okay. The X key switches colors from black to white, or from foreground to background. Okay, and we're just going to use this to sort of paint away the green parts, because we don't want that in our selection at all. Okay, so keep doing this. Keep refining your selection, keep painting away your parts. And then when you're all done, and you want to check on your selection to see if it's any better, instead of going over to your toolbox to switch into quick mask mode or out of quick mask mode, you're just going to hit the Q key. The Q key is a quick way to toggle back and forth between quick mask mode and regular mode. So Q. And there we have a really complicated selection made for us. Alright, so we've made our selection of the phone and we made our selection of the rocket. Let's go and add that as a layer mask. So go to your layer panel, make sure the Dragon Shuttle, your top layer, whatever's coming out of the phone is selected, and then click Add Layer Mask. And now we have a layer mask. Perfect. So that's really all you need to do for this project. There's a couple of extra steps in the written tutorial. I'm not going to include those in the video tutorial, but if you have questions about those, let me know. We're also going to cover those topics later on in other lessons. So that's the basic set of steps for completing this assignment.